Hey, what's going on, guys? It's the Boxing Genius here. So before I play the video and I roll it, I just want to say that the verse or the full version of this film study will be on Patreon. And first of all, I want to thank all the guys who are on there. We're becoming bigger and bigger every day. I'm getting people from all around the world. I've had people from USA, from UK, I have people from Canada, so I'm really thankful for those guys on Patreon. If you want to join, you're gonna see the full version of this film study over there. Cuban Southpaw, the style of the Cuban Southpaw. We're gonna look at some strengths and weaknesses. However, for motherfuckers here on YouTube, you can get it for free and you can get a sneak peek of this film study, so enjoy. Alright, what's going on, guys? It's the Boxing Genius here, and today we will talk about the Cuban Southpaw style. Now, of course, there are some Cuban boxers out there who are orthodox, but based on all the things that I have read, most Cuban boxers are trained to be southpaws, and that's why I'm going to be emphasizing southpaws today. Now, if you are from Cuba, okay, if you're from Cuba, and then you come at me by saying, oh, that's not how the Cuban school teaches it. We don't teach guys to run and to be a coward. Okay, but that's what we see, right? That's what we fucking see. I'm not here to bash the Cuban boxing style. I think there are some great stuff that we can take away from it, and I also think that there are some stuff that we should completely avoid, okay? And that's what I'm gonna do for this video. I'm gonna point out some things that are really good about the Cuban boxing style, especially the southpaw style, which is what most Cuban boxers are. They're mostly southpaws. So let's get right into it. First thing that I want to look at is the active probing of Cuban boxers. So just look at this for yourself. There are a couple of reasons why they like to probe a lot, okay? Number one, a lot of Cubans are trained to be counterpunchers. So what does that mean? They are trying to draw a reaction from their opponent, and this is what makes Cubans special, okay? What makes them special is that they don't necessarily wait for the right opportunity to counter, they create the right opportunity to counter. And how do they do that? They do that by constantly probing, constantly controlling the lead hand of their orthodox opponent, and then drawing a reaction from their opponent. So as you can see here, he probes Donaire, and then it baits a reaction from Donaire. He tried to throw a jab, and then as you can see there, Rigondeaux threw a right hook, which is what he planned all along. However, it didn't land because Donaire is too far away. Okay, here's another one. He's gonna actively probe Nonito Donaire. It's too slow. Let's play it at 0.5, okay? He's constantly probing Nonito Donaire, and as you can see, Donaire is really finding it hard to find the openings, okay? He's finding it hard to enter because at any point, Rigondeaux can time him with the right counter shot, and Rigondeaux already has some stuff in his mind that Rigondeaux already has some punches that he's anticipating to come at him, okay? So, if Donaire comes at him with the right hand, he's gonna counter with the left hand. If Donaire comes at him with a left hook, he'll probably pivot away and then counter with a right hook or a right jab, just like how he did against Casimero. If Donaire throws a jab, same thing. Rigondeaux will counter him with a straight left hand and then pivot away at the last second. So with the Cuban style, it's really good because they have a lot of ways to counter, and not only that, but they have a lot of ways to bait you into throwing the shots that they want you to throw. And with that being said, now they already know what they're going to do, what their next move is, because in their mind, they are controlling the punches that you're throwing by constantly probing, constantly pawing their lead hand at you. And that's what we see from these Cuban fighters, man. Whenever they're fighting orthodox fighters, they control the pace, they control the speed. Alright, next thing we'll look at is the quick pivots, okay? And what I'm going to refer to now is the pivot outside of the lead foot. So I'm not going to talk about the reverse pivot. That is a completely different move, however, they also do it. And how exactly does Rigondeaux, or how exactly does Cuban fighters pivot away so quickly from the incoming punches? Well, it's pretty simple. It all starts with the head. So as you can see here, he will already lean over to his right leg in advance. What does that enable him to do? Number one, it prevents him from getting caught in the center. And then number two, when he pivots away, it's so quick because now his head doesn't have to make that slight adjustment, and he doesn't have to take that extra millisecond to transfer his weight over to the right leg. So in advance, he is already floating on one leg over here. His left leg is already kind of lifted up, and he's always ready to pivot this way. Okay, so as you can see here, he's rocking back and forth, and in every step, he is leaning on the right leg. The reason why he does that is because if ever Donato throws, one of his wild shots, he's ready to pivot away at any time because his weight is constantly on that right leg. And for this one, there's not going to be any pivot, but here for the next one, I think there's going to be a pivot right here. As you can see here, he's already leaning on his right leg in advance. Again, there, he leaned over here to his right leg. He's rocking back and forth. And notice how his head is always in line with his right knee. What does that enable him to do? That makes his pivots quicker, okay? And what really makes it frustrating to fight a Cuban fighter is their pivots. They pivot away so quickly, okay? They escape the firing range by using their feet. They escape the incoming punches by pivoting away and then avoiding those shots, okay, before it even comes. Now notice here how his head is leaning more on the right side, and this will enable him to pivot away again very quickly. And notice how his left foot is kind of always floating away. And notice there how he throws the left hand and then he pivots away so quickly after that left hand. Okay, leaning over to the right, leaning over to the right, boom, left hand. Notice how quick it is for him to pivot away after he punches. Here's the last one. He's gonna pivot again. I think on this one, the fans started booing him. And just watch his head, where his head goes. His head is always in line with the right leg because his right leg is what drives him to pivot away in that direction, okay? Now, probably the most noticeable thing that we'll see from Cuban Southpaws is how consistent they are with their stance, okay? They almost never get out of their stance, and you'll rarely see them square up unless they are moving side to side. That's the only time that you'll really see them squared up. For the most part, they stay in their relatively wide stance. And so let's just look at some clips to not... All right, here it is. So as you can see here, even after throwing all of those power shots, his feet remains in the same place. He never squares up, he never changes his stance, and the gap between his right foot and his left foot is still the same. Okay, it's still pretty wide. The rear foot is still pretty far away, so that his rear side is also far away. The left side of his face and the left side of his body is kind of far away. It's protected in that sense. And he never really squares up, he never really gets his feet to be close together, even though he's already throwing those power shots. A lot of fighters, when they throw power shots, they end up in a squared up position, or they change their stance, so their feet becomes closer to each other. That's just a natural way for human beings to gain their balance, okay? By putting their feet back, or by putting their feet closer to each other, we become more stable, we compensate for the imbalance that we may have in our body, and that's what most guys do. But Cuban fighters have figured out a way to remain in their stance even though they are throwing their power shots. They never overcommit, they never get wild. If you look at Casimero, it's the exact opposite. If he throws the right hand, it's gonna square up. He throws the left hook, his stance is not gonna be the same. But Cuban fighters relatively stay relatively in their wide stance, okay? Their front foot and their back foot is pretty far away from each other, and they are mostly bladed, okay? So notice here again how he remains in his wide stance even though he's defending those shots, okay? The distance between his right foot and his left foot is relatively the same, and the only time he squared up in that clip was when he was moving side to side. So just look at it for yourself, okay? Moving back. When he took this L step, that's the only time it really squared up, and that's the only time his feet became close to each other. So let's look at some more clips here. Again, the wide stance is seen, or again, you're gonna see the wide stance, and notice how perfectly he maintains it at the middle of a very strong and powerful punch. At the middle of throwing a powerful punch, notice how he remains in his wide stance and he doesn't get out of there, okay? So after he throws that long left hand, even if he follows it through, his feet never follows the punch, okay? And naturally, for a lot of boxers, when they throw the right hand or when they throw the rear shot, their rear foot follows it with it because they become super wild. They shift their weight all the way on the front foot. That the only way really to get back in balance is by squaring up. But Cuban boxers you rarely see Cuban boxers becoming or getting into that kind of situation.